Hi, my name is Erasmia Shimitra. This presentation is part of a software testing course and I hope you enjoy it. Have you imagined being taught TDD in your first programming courses? What I'm going to talk about today is two articles that have to do with TDD in education through the eyes of students, and as a second step, ComTest, a tool to help introducing TDD in early programming courses. But some of you might not even know what TDD is, so let's take a look. TDD stands for Test-Driven Development, and it's an extreme programming practice. It's a testing method, sometimes considered as a design method. It's a test-develop refactor cycle for small pieces of code each time. The first step is a test that must fail, which means that the code to make the test pass doesn't exist. As a second step, the developer has to make the test pass, and the last step is refactoring, which means making the code optimum. Let's take a look at the articles. The first one is titled as Test-Driven Development in Education, Experiences with Critical Viewpoints, and the second one as ComTest, a tool to impart TDD and unit testing to introductory level programming. You can see that the authors of the first article are two of the authors of the second. That's because the second article follows the first one, and it's actually part of its future work. More specifically, the first experiment has to do with TDD in education as an assignment in a software testing course for master's students, whereas the second article describes experiments while using a special tool developed to help students with testing in the first programming courses. Let's start with the first article. The author's research has to do with TDD in education. It was based on an experiment which was adapted in a software testing course for master's students, as mentioned before. It was in the form of an assignment and a questionnaire. TDD was new for the students and they were only given an introductory lecture. Beyond that, they learned by themselves. For the assignment, they used Eclipse and JUnit, and the first task was a warming up for the tools and TDD, and the second one was a simple but challenging enough implementation of an HTTP server. The questionnaire was split into two parts. The first one is about students' background and the way they worked in the assignment. The results showed that only a couple of students were actually worked with TDD before, and some of them were only made an introduction. However, most of them were motivated enough to try following the test-first approach. As they worked in pairs, most of them said that they worked together for at least some parts of the assignment. The second part has to do with the assignment and TDD itself, with the purpose of getting students' opinion about these. The results of this part surprised the authors. Obviously, comparing students' background, the ones without experience on TDD found the assignment slightly more difficult. But surprisingly, students that worked individually found it easier than the rest. In any case, more than half of the students stated that they would like to work with TDD in the future, despite all the difficulties. The authors concluded with 4 categories of difficulties for this assignment. Implementation of both the server and the tests was found in 22 answers. Writing appropriate tests reveals the uncertainty about the extent and number of tests, as well as the difficulty in using the tools. Abstraction level shows the difficulty of testing the server in small tests, and finally, discipline attitude tells us that the student's difficulty in strictly following the new test-first approach. The authors have a small discussion after this about the experiment. They state that when introducing TDD in education, books should be carefully selected in order the students to get the correct concept. They also admitted that for better results of the experiment, students should be better prepared and shown more examples and clear models of TDD in the beginning. They support the idea of TDD as an essential part of earlier education due to the fact that the participants had already built bad habits during their working experience. This leads to the second article, of course. However, there is a risk of leading to excessive technical information with this, so this should be after the first programming course. Additionally, the difficulty of discipline in following the test-first approach was noticed. Nevertheless, the experiment is considered successful since the students' experiences revealed various relevant viewpoints concerning the matter of TDD in education. As a conclusion, the author's suggestion in general and as an answer to the technical difficulties of the students is to place TDD in the early curriculum, but after the first programming course, as well as applying it on not so technical, complicated tasks. But real benefits in using TDD in education are still unclear, so the author's future work will be another experiment in the same course, but with a different programming task. Now let's check out the second article, which presents the ComTest tool and reveals the first findings about using it. This tool was developed to release students from increased technical load while introducing testing and TDD in early programming courses. It can also be found as an Eclipse plugin. The author's research was based on observing 4 offerings of early programming courses where ComTest was used. In the beginning, the authors refer to many different papers about researches that reveal interesting things around TDD and at an introductory level. For example, beginner programmers don't have inner motivation for working with TDD or unit testing, however beliefs and actual practice differ. Examples with positive outcome show that TDD is seen as a design and testing practice, and an educational tool that facilitates learning. However, the more experienced a programmer is, the more are the chances to be positive about working with TDD. TDD in the first programming course can be too challenging, along with the rest new concepts. As an addition, since TDD is difficult even for more advanced programmers due to multiple tasking, researchers' recommendation is exposing the students to the idea of testing without the extra technical load, like the use of JUnit. TDD and unit testing are challenging but important, so the best the authors could do is make it as less burdensome as possible with the use of ComTest. The experiment was based on observing the use of ComTest in 2 offerings of each of the 2 first programming courses, CS1 and CS2. The first course's teaching aim is procedural programming, and the second one is the basics of object-oriented programming. In the beginning, tests were in main methods in different classes, but when JUnit appeared, the testing part was complicated. The need of a tool like ComTest was obvious. The basic idea of ComTest is that the students write unit tests in Javadoc comments using a macro language with simple and short syntax, and then the tool transforms them into real JUnit tests. The code template is also provided as a skeleton code for writing tests with ComTest. There are some examples of tests written in Javadoc which ComTest uses. Here you can see the first one, which shows a simple usage of the tool. Macro language gives the possibility of redefining operators into anything, making test writing simpler. For example, the triple equals stands for the assert equals of JUnit. The second example shows a simple tabular usage. The tabular version of test writing makes multiple value equality tests even easier by only providing arguments and results instead of creating new tests for each testing value. Here you can see that the example uses one argument and one result for one test case. And the last example shows an extensive tabular usage of ComTest. This one is more complicated since it has more arguments and results. The double line shows a new independent test case. Certainly, ComTest was not developed just for the use in the first programming courses. More complicated tests can be written, and the authors underline the benefits. Shorter and easier to write tests, which are also close to the code under test, since they are contained in Java documents. Another benefit is that ComTest is helpful as a designing tool and easier to be used with TDD. And lastly, ComTest tests can also be considered as examples of what the code under test implements. As already mentioned, the findings and conclusions are extracted from two CS1 and two CS2 offerings. In the CS2 course, students got to choose between JUnit and ComTest. Since ComTest is used at some point, the initial ComTest users had better results than the initial JUnit users concerning test writing. Additionally, before the appearance of ComTest, students were resisting to writing tests. In the CS1 course, the testing part was introduced in the second part of the course, while the lectures had ComTest examples from the beginning. However, test writing was not compulsory due to the fact that this was the first programming course. Despite this, and even though they were insecure for writing new tests, students used pre-written tests. The authors suggest that the use of ComTest in CS1 and CS2 was profitable. The majority of the students in CS2 chose ComTest over JUnit, and they had better results. Concerning CS1, the authors plan to have a mandatory testing part to observe the students' testing capabilities. Nevertheless, ComTest and its Eclipse plugin need improvements in order to be used by professional software engineers. The author's future work includes an improved version of ComTest and in addition a controlled experiment for evaluation of it. The author's future work includes an improved version of ComTest and in addition a controlled experiment for evaluation of it. Finally, some short comments on the articles from my perspective. The writing technique and structure of the papers are similar since they come from the same university and partly the same authors. I found them easy to understand but also quite advanced, just as they should be. They included sufficient examples and plenty of interesting references for other studies and books related to the subjects mentioned. The reasons I chose this article was, first of all, my interest in test-driven development and extreme programming. It was so interesting to see the work of the same team but extended in two different articles, and the one being part of the first one's future world. Here you can find the references for the two articles I talked about, and thanks for watching.